es nacer en una secta, escapar y escribir un libro después que la destruya. Esta es la historia de Juliana Buhring, una mujer que nació en una de las peores sectas del siglo XX, Children of God. Es una secta conocida porque formaban parte de ella muchos famosos cuando eran críos. Joaquín Phoenix, su hermano River también, que tenía problemas con el alcohol debido al trauma, de hecho acabó falleciendo siendo muy jovencito. Rose McGowan, que era Paige en Embrujadas. Es una secta popularmente conocida porque estaba basada en el abuso a menores, pero he de deciros de verdad, bueno, ya me conocéis, en la entrevista no hay preguntas sobre los abusos, no lo considero necesario y también para qué hablar de algo tan triggering para la persona que estoy entrevistando. Pero hablamos de cómo era el día a día en la secta, cómo sus padres terminaron ahí, cómo consiguió finalmente escapar, cómo fue escribir un libro que se convirtiera en bestseller y que acabara con la secta, que es una locura. Y luego además hay una cosa que hace que esta historia sea todavía más interesante y es que Juliana, de la secta, para pasar el trauma, aparte de terapia y el libro y todo esto, cogió una bici y se puso a dar la vuelta al mundo. Fue la primera mujer en hacerlo y además creo que es la persona que lo ha hecho más rápido. Espero que disfrutéis mucho de la entrevista y de corazón muchas gracias por verla.
Tenía la duda, un podcast de Judith Tiral.
Juliana, thank you so much for coming to Tenía la duda. I really appreciate that you're
Thanks
here.
for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be in Barcelona.
One of the first questions I always make to the people I interview is if we can go to like the very beginning. And in your case, I think it will be like, since it's from childhood, maybe it's like one of your first memories from childhood that you have.
I was born in a cult called the Children of God. And the cult leader, David Berg, well, he was very obviously a narcissist, as most cult leaders are. He was a narcissist, but he was also a pedophile. So the cult was founded in 1969. So he was a failed pastor, the cult leader, David Berg. And so that his way of gathering a following was to preach revolution, let's split off from society, let's create our own utopia. So it started with very idealistic ideas, which the hippies loved, right? So they joined thinking they were joining this, utopia where everyone lived together in communal houses and big communities. And it was kind of a mix of Christianity and communism, let's say. And so that's when my father and mother joined. It was with very good ideals and not thinking they're joining a cult. Nobody joins a cult thinking. And they're love bombed in the beginning. So, my father was lavished with a lot of attention and praise by the cult leader. He kind of found in David Berg and the cult the family that he never really had growing up.
Do you remember something of your childhood? Like, what was it? Where were you living? Why were you traveling so much also? Like, were you going to normal schools?
No. So because obviously of all the promiscuity going on in the group, they started having a lot of children. So they saw this as a way to have, create a new generation for the cult that would be pure, unadulterated, never had any contact with the outside world, that they could raise them with the cult beliefs and ideals. And saw us as the perfect little, able to manipulate us into whatever they wanted us to become. So when I was 3, my mom had another 2 children with my father. And because David Berg didn't want my father having any distractions away from, his loyalty to end his job and making money for David Berg, my mom got quite sick, and they used that as an excuse to separate my mother from my father, saying that if you were physically ill, it was a sign of being spiritually ill. Oh. And they didn't want him to catch whatever spiritual illness she had, right? Whatever spiritual sickness she had. So they separated them when I was 3. But in order to keep her on side, to keep her close, as a kind of, I guess they kind of held me as a hostage. So they told her that she needs to leave one of her children behind they told her to stay with my father, that he should have one of the children.
But you were not with your dad, right?
And no, and she didn't know that. Oof. So they sent her away with my brothers and sisters.
When all this was happening, and this, because I know the cult thing, like, people are like, how can you go there? I think it's actually really easy to fall into a cult.
Oh yeah, it is, because you don't see the bad parts until much later, and by then you've already cut off your own family, your own friends. You've isolated. They isolate you from your life before that. People who joined the cult had to sell all of their belongings and give it all to the group.
Oof.
So they would have nothing if they left, and they would have already like cut off their own families. So this kind of steady indoctrination, so you don't see the bad parts immediately, and then it's a kind of a drip, 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 so it normalizes it until it becomes so normal and everyone else is doing it, must be okay, that you no longer see that it's wrong anymore. So for example, when they started to encourage the adults to have sexual interactions with the children.
The question was, oh, wow.
It started with David Berg's own son, and he wrote a kind of a childcare manual of the stories of how they were raising him, and this was how the adults should raise all the children. He preached this kind of, well, you know, it's just natural, nudity is natural, and God is love, and the way to show love is through, you know, our bodies, and children also can, you know, orgasm, children can also have pleasure, so why shouldn't they?
Beautiful men and women, beautiful youth, even beautiful sex.
Then David Berg was very clever in that he used Bible verses and the Bible to justify a lot of his doctrines. So he said, look, it's in the Bible. Jesus said, God is love.
God.
You know,
Your parents, before letting you with him or with whoever when you were 3, they didn't start having like little doubts, you know, like being suspicious of this is actually, even if, you know, this is, everybody's doing it, you know, maybe they were talking between them, this kind of strange or not?
It's possible that some did, but if they did, they would be put on display and punished in front of everyone, so you would be scared to speak your mind. And people would inform on, you know, if I heard so-and-so saying this negative thing against, and so then you would get in huge trouble and you would be punished. So
most of these people were brainwashed, they were controlled. If they rebelled, they could possibly lose their children and never see them again. So this cult was about control.
There was that encouragement to report on each other, and you never knew who to trust. So there was always this feeling of you know, never speak your mind, and always, first of all, creating an us versus them. So it's us against all the outsiders, the systemites, the rest of the world, and they want to attack us, so we have to stay together. And then there's a fear of the outside. They create this fear through controlling information. So if you have a control of information and you instill fear of everything else, then people are willing to do anything to be protected, to stay within the group.
The houses where you were living, what were they like?
They were just huge communes. So I remember from the earliest age, the communes would be anywhere from 100 to 300 people living in each one. So you would just have wall to wall of mattresses of people sleeping on the floor. Or there was no like personal space. As a child, we literally slept. So I should continue the story. So they sent my mother away, and that was my first memory. And just around that time is when there were so many children, they decided that another way to control people is if you control their family life. You control who they have sex with, you control what happens to them, their children, everything. So they said, we are all one family. People should not just be loyal to their individual families. So all the children born into the group are children of the group. They're not, so the parents couldn't just be protective of an individual child or give more attention to their individual child. So when I was around 4, they started to create big training camps to send all the children to. And this was going to be their way of raising a generation of pure, indoctrinated, little cult zombies, in other words. And so from the time I was 4.5, 5, I just grew up in these huge training centers, which were, we were divided into groups according to our ages, and we'd live with our group, eat with them, march with them. It was very military style.
When your mom leaves you, with who? Do you remember?
With the random members of the group. So from the time I was 3.5, 4, I was shipped to, I want to say, more than 15 countries around the world as I was growing up. With random adults, basically trafficked, because nobody questioned. It was strange.
How can it be? Because I understand the cult, but like, you know, when you are going out of a country, like, where are you going? Where are your parents?
They never asked back then. In the 80s and 90s, there was no real controls of, like, if there was a white child traveling with a white adult, they never questioned. my mother signed a document saying whoever has this document is Juliana's legal guardian.
Wow.
So I just was passed around with this paper saying,
Wow,
you know,
Juliana,
it was
wow.
random people I didn't know.
Did your mom explain to you the situation? Like, I'm going to leave you here, but I will come
No,
back.
that's the thing. Nobody told me she was leaving. I remember we had a car, it was green color. We called it the avocado car because of the color. And I remember playing upstairs, and my elder sister from my father's previous marriage, she was there to watch us children. She was 10, and she was supposed to distract me while my mom left. And I remember hearing the car start up. I look out the window, it's the avocado car. And I remember seeing my mom walking out to the car with my brother and sister with the bags. And I thought, they're leaving without me. They forgot me. And I ran downstairs. I opened the door and I was like, Mom, wait. And they were pulling out of the driveway. And I remember seeing my mom wave to me, and she was crying. And
she
I was
didn't
like,
know
"Wait
this
for
was
me."
happening? Like, did they just told her when she arrived? Or?
She knew she was leaving.
Oh my
but
God.
she was not supposed to tell me.
So they leave you there, and the next day, do you
So,
remember what happened?
I don't remember the next day. I just remember waking up a few times in the night. I started to wet my bed a lot. And I remember I would wake up in the night and be terrified because I knew when I wet my bed, they would beat me in the morning.
Oh God, Juliana, that's
so
everything's.
I started to learn to like wake, because I would have these dreams that I couldn't find the toilet, and I was rushing around from room to room, and finally I would find the toilet in my dream, and I would sit down and go pee, and then I'd wake up and I was peeing my bed.
Oh,
And so I found a way to flip my mattress and go and get a new sheet from the cupboard and put it on so that I wouldn't get a spanking in the morning. So I mean, that was one of the side effects. And then another one was I would pick at my hair until I had big like bald patches all over. So I definitely remember having, now looking back, I can say that they were symptoms of trauma, but at the time I just thought it was one more thing that was wrong with me.
what was the reason to keep you moving so much?
To this day, I don't know. I really don't know.
And
I suspect that because my father was in a secret location working with the cult leader, and where the cult leader was, he was. And I suspect that they would move me around to be in the nearest kind of training center to wherever my father was working. But I never saw him.
But it was you moving and the rest of the people were staying? Like they had a lot of centers everywhere?
Centers all over the world.
Oh,
Yes.
They were powerful, they were big.
Yeah, they were in over 100 countries. Yeah.
When they were moving you of countries, they were just somebody, it was always the same person taking care of you?
No, always different. Always a different random stranger. So we would be housed in our groups of children, and it was very harsh discipline, very regimented life. So we would wake up, we would have to have 2 hours of cult indoctrination. Then we would have 2 hours of like chores, cleaning. We would wash all the laundry for the group, or we would do all the dishes at the end of every meal. And then we would go out on the streets to make money for them.
How?
So busking on the street, or selling pamphlets of the cult literature on the streets. So they used the children a lot because we were cute to make money for the group as well. So we were, essentially
You never went to school? Like no.
So the schooling was in the group only, and they didn't believe that we needed to have a higher education because they believed the world was ending and Jesus Christ was going to come back in 1993. 1993 came and went, and Jesus hadn't come back, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to die.
Did you have like a proper date? Like it's coming on 6th of November? No.
Oh no, just the year. It was the year.
It had to be so scary, no?
So I thought that I was going to, I was going to die at 12. And we believed that the Antichrist was going to rise. They used the Antichrist for everything outside that was government related that could have protected us children. They instilled that fear in us growing up, that they were Antichrist forces. The police were Antichrist forces. The social workers were working for the devil. So we had this fear. So even if we did realize that we were being abused and we wanted to go out and tell somebody or run away, we were more afraid of them outside than inside. So we thought, we would be killed, or we would be, imprisoned, or...
Could you watch like TV or like have like normal ideas from the outside world, like?
No, and because we didn't have any idea of the outside world apart from our minimal interactions with selling literature or, you know, people who interacted with us, but we were there to save their souls. So we always thought that the whole world was divided in the category of sheep and wolves. Sheep were people you could pray with and win to heaven or into the group, you know, convert. And the wolves were the people who were against us, who would cause us harm, which would actually be helping. But, you know, they were telling us that they would cause us harm.
They were saying on 1993, the world was going to
and yeah, Jesus was to come back in the sky, and we're all going to be raptured.
And if you were part of children of God, you will save.
Yes.
You know, your soul was safe. If not,
we were all saved. Yeah.
Oh wow!
We were all going to be raptured to heaven. So
that's nuts.
Yeah.
Wow.
So until 1993, I probably believed it, but after that, I was definitely not having it. I mean, by the time I was adolescent age, I believed none of it. I saw so many disparities between things they were saying, even contradictory Bible verses contradicting certain doctrines. So I was very inquisitive, and I was always asking questions, which they hated, because that was called doubting. Doubt was of the devil, but that was just because they feared anyone questioning the truth of things. So I was labeled a rebel pretty early on, and because of that, they tried to break me very soon. I was asking too many questions, and I was very observant, so I would notice things even when we would go out.
You never had like somebody that actually did you ever had like a good, we say tutor, is the same word in English? Like somebody taking care of you, but that it was
like a teacher who was
actually
nice.
Care about you and treat you well?
The few teachers that were nice, they didn't last long because they didn't want us children being attached to them, but also they wanted us children to be always on edge and in fear. And so the teachers that were nice, they would pretty soon lose the job and bring in a terrible one that was like they were supposed to beat us, they were supposed to punish us, they were supposed to, inflict all kinds of horrible punishments. And you never knew when you were going to be punished and for what, because from one day to the next, the rules would change. And every adult was allowed to punish you if they wanted to.
All these years, you didn't know anything about your mom or your dad?
No. My dad, yes, I would, because his voice was in all of the tapes and all of the cult literature. He was everywhere, but I never actually got to ever see him. And so I was quite a rebellious teenager. And when I realized he didn't want me, I think that's when a switch flipped in my mind. And that was when I became very angry, very self-abusive. I thought if nobody wants me, then I don't want me either. And I was suicidal. I tried to kill myself a couple of times. I became anorexic. I didn't have any hygiene. I was dressed like a bag, like a tomboy. They stopped my education at 12 because they said I was too smart. When
you were like 16, or did you know actually I think I'm in a cult and this is not normal and I see normal families and did you know?
From the time I was 13, I told my dad I wanted to leave. And his solution was to send me to a training center in India to break me, to break my spirit. So I was for 6 months on permanent silence restriction. Nobody could speak to me.
Oh my God.
I was put on the streets to make money for them, and just worked like a slave, cleaning the house and
you couldn't escape, Juliana.
Being slapped around, and I had people praying over me as they thought I was demon possessed. They was doing exorcisms on me and all of this stuff.
Exorcism? For what? Because they're
because I had the spirit of rebellion in me. I had a demon of rebellion in me because I was
what
rebellious.
Was it like, the exorcism? They were just
they would just scream and pray over you and shake you and and blah, 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 and this kind of nonsense. And I remember laughing.
We are laughing, but this is fucking true.
I was laughing, which to them just showed I was even more possessed. I just thought it was so funny. This is how rebellious I was. I was I was not having it. Anyway, they couldn't break me in the end.
You couldn't just one day, I don't know what was it like, but you couldn't just run away and be like, fuck, ciao.
Yeah, well, at the time the communes were behind high walls with barbed wire, and some of them even had armed guards. So you couldn't just run away. You had to climb a wall. But then the other thing was it was a lot of the way they kept people and us kids in was through fear, psychological fear of the outside. So they would say, well, you know, if you leave, you're in the devil's territory and you're not under God's protection anymore. So you can be attacked, you can be killed, you know. The kids who leave, they become drug addicts, they become prostitutes, and that's all you're good for if you leave. So when they failed to break me in India, they called my dad and they said, come and get her because we can't cure her. She's incurable. And this to him was the biggest shame. So hear his daughter and here, you know, I was, you know, demon possessed, rebellious, and curious. He was like a superstar in the group. So for him, it was like, he literally said that he didn't want to know me anymore. Like, that's when I at that time I truly hated him, because I realized he didn't care about me at all. Oof. So I was like, well, if you don't care about me, I was hurt. Let's just say I was hurt. In order for Dad to come back into Japan, he had to change his passport and his name. So he went to England to change his name and passport. And I would have to get a new passport too, because we were blacklisted. So in order for me to get a new passport, I would need to go back to Germany with my mom. So for the first time, wow, I met my mom again and my brothers and sisters.
Your mom was still in the cult?
Yes, she was living in Switzerland with my brother and sisters.
And
she had remarried.
And their life, what was it like?
The cult members living in Europe had much better life than those of us who grew up in like third world countries. They were much less strict and regimented, and my brothers and sisters had grown up with my mom being always around, so they had been much more protected, because my mom was a teacher and she took care of young kids in the group, so wow, she was able to take care of them.
They were not abused?
She was a very kind, my mom was very good. She was very, she was one of the pioneers in the group of teaching children early how to read and write. And this was the one thing that the cult did agree with, because they wanted us to be able to read the cult literature from the earliest age possible and to write reports on ourselves. So from the time I was 2, I could read and write fluently, read the Bible.
Write reports on yourself? Like what?
Every day we had to write a report at the end of the day, our bowel movements, something we had thankful for, and then we had to write everything we had done wrong that day.
When you saw your mom for the first time after so many years, what did she hug you, or she was like, I'm so sorry?
Oh, she was crying and hug and everything, but I didn't remember her, so I didn't feel anything actually.
Wow.
I was I guess I could say I was quite cold.
Was it like the first time you saw somebody like caring for you?
Yeah, I think so. It was a very short time I stayed with them. It was only a few months, but it was one of my happiest memories, because we were just living, just us, in like a gîte. We went to the south of France for like 3-4 months and rented a gîte. And I would go out with my little brothers and sisters. We would wander the fields, and I almost like had almost a normal kind of a childhood, apart from not going to school. But you know, we would make tree houses, and we basically not having a regimented schedule like I had my whole life. And yeah, it was a really happy memory.
Did they leave you there for a long time, or
just a few months?
And then after
3 months, and then
that,
sent me back to Japan.
Again?
Yeah, sent me back to Japan.
To do what?
To be in the commune.
But if your dad didn't care for you, I'm sorry,
yeah,
that sounded horrible. But if your dad was not there for you, and your mom was like, oh, thankfully you will come back, and why take you again? You know, why taking you to Japan again?
Because that was always the plan, was that I was just supposed to be there to get a new passport, and my mom was supposed to help me do that, and then she had to send me back. So, yeah. So there was never really a question if I could stay or not stay.
Wow.
I was never the choice.
So you going back to your dad?
Back to the cult training center. He was around, but he wasn't around. Like, I wasn't living with him or anything.
You went through so many things. It doesn't look like you had like a normal month.
No, I don't have very many happy memories, actually. No.
Wait, how did you go out from? Because it looks impossible. How did you were like, enough? I had enough. I'm leaving.
I guess my leaving happened in the evolution of the group. David Berg died. his wife, Karen Zerby, took over the group.
Nothing happened to him? He just died peacefully and ciao?
Well, the last years of his life, I like to think were painful in the sense that he was an alcoholic. So the last years of his life, he was impotent. He couldn't take solid food. He could only have liquid food, and he was in pain. So I like to think at least he suffered a little bit in the end of his life, but definitely not enough to justify what he did. But the woman who took over, Karen Zerby, was actually much worse. She was like the Ghislaine Maxwell to the Jeffrey Epstein. She was that. She was the one who organized and fed young girls to him. She was the one who was responsible for the worst tortures in the training camps inflicted on the children. So she was really the neck on the head. So when he died, there was the idea that things would get better, but really things got a lot stricter and harsher on us, second generation. And around that time, I was very depressed. I was very anorexic. I wrote to my mom, and I said, I want to come and stay with you for a bit, because I knew I needed to get away. I needed to escape because I knew I was not well. So I went there, and I remember I arrived at the station, and she came to pick me up, and she saw the state of me, and she just started crying. She was like, so anyway, they all rallied around me to get me better, to try and because I was like a bone.
I'm sure you were like, this happened, or they made me this, or they were,
Yeah, I did tell her a few things, but they never really saw the thing, what we know as abuse. They didn't see it as abuse in the cult, so you couldn't really say I'm.
I understand.
Even depression, you were not allowed to be depressed. So there was something wrong with you spiritually if you were depressed, but it was always your fault if there was something wrong. It was not the fault of the group or the doctrine or anything else. It was you. Everything good was thanks to Jesus, thanks to God, thanks to the group. But everything bad was you. I think my mom realized I just needed to have a lot of love because I had not been given much. Real love. The cult preached love, and they all said, I love you all the time. Like, it was thrown around like, God bless you, I love you, So it meant nothing to me. Love meant nothing. Actually, it meant abuse. It meant pain. So yeah, I think being around my family then, like a real family, I started to get better. And then we went to Senegal, and then seeing people so much worse off than me, like we were going to orphanages, we were distributing food to impoverished areas, and so seeing people who also had very difficult lives. I guess gave me a bit of a perspective, and I was like, look, everybody has their version of suffering, right? Suffering is universal, and you can't quantify someone else's suffering, compare it to your own. We all have our own struggle in life to surpass, and so I think helping other people who had it, in my eyes, worse than me, gave me a perspective on that, and I started to get better mentally and physically.
Being inside the cult,
Still inside the cult, yes. But being in Africa, and this is why I think I stayed longer than I would have, is that being in Africa, it was considered kind of wild country, and it was not under much control as far as the cult went. So we kind of could do our own thing. So because of that, I was living quite a free life. I would go out to the bars at night with my sister, and we'd go out drinking, and so we always within the cult, working during the day for the cult, but then having quite a lot of freedom that we didn't have before. So I think that also, being able to just kind of live a double life, kept me in longer than I would have. And then my father had moved to Uganda in the meantime with his Japanese family, and he was starting another radio show. So he contacted my mom and me saying, listen, Juliana, can she come and help me start a new radio program, because I was very good at writing. And he was like, I need a script writer for the radio program. So he lured me there with the idea of coming up with this great, plan. And I was like, I would like to maybe give my father another chance. And it was exciting to me to be able to become a script writer for a radio program. I was like, that's an interesting job,
something
right?
Different. Yeah.
So I went to Uganda, and very quickly realized that he hadn't wanted me there for any other reason but to take care of his newest child and be a mother to the new child and clean and cook for them. And then around that time, my dad was contacted by the mother of one of his illegitimate children that he'd had. My dad had like 17 children.
Oh my God.
From 8
Do you
different
consider
women.
them your siblings also?
Yeah. I found all of them.
Wow,
Yeah.
crazy.
It was like my mission to get to know all my brothers and sisters. This one, her name was Davida. When I was 14, she had written to Dad and to us because she wanted to get to know her family. And Dad had written to say that, listen, I have my own, another family now. And basically, since her mother had left the group when she was younger, they were systemites. Dad wanted nothing to do with her because she was not in the family. So she was not definitely part of his family. And that, his loyalty was to the group first, his family secondary, and anyone outside of that, not at all. Living with Dad in Uganda, we got a message from her mother saying, please, can you come and save her? So she had fallen into depression after she got that message from Dad. And she fell in with a bad crowd, started taking drugs, and gotten onto heroin. And she was
so
in
much
a really bad
pain.
state. Yeah, she was in a lot of pain. And so Teria, the mother, said, "Listen, could you just, even just if you came, so she could meet you, she might get better because this all started because of." Your response to not wanting to be part of her life. She also had the same idea, sense of like abandonment, that there was something wrong, that, her father didn't want her and, the rest of her family didn't want her. Dad stayed 2 days and left. He saw the state of her and it was like another embarrassment and shame on him that, he has a daughter somewhere who's a heroin addict, right? And I was like, I'm staying. I stayed for 3 months. We were like sisters. We slept in the same bed together.
Juliana.
We'd go out party together at night, and she started to get better. She was not taking drugs then. Then after around 3 months, Dad wrote and says, if you don't come back now, you're going to be excommunicated. And I told her, listen, I have to go, because at the time I wasn't yet ready to leave completely. Because
nobody can
leave the
speak
brothers
to you,
and sisters.
right?
And if you're excommunicated, you don't get to have any contact anymore with anyone in the group. I said, listen, I left her the last of my money, and I said, come to Uganda, and at least you'll be away from the drug scene, and we'll find a way together to do something. So that was the last I saw her, and it was around the time of the tsunami. I went to Sri Lanka to help with tsunami relief, and when I came back, my dad met me on the steps, and he was like, I have to tell you something. Your sister has died. They said it was an overdose, but she had said very clearly that if she started again, that it would be the last time, because she didn't want to put her mother through the pain of everything that she had endured during her drug problems. She'd overdosed like 10 times more than a normal user would know to take, so it was definitely on purpose. Yeah, it was suicide.
I'm so sorry.
And so 2 days after my sister died, my father had this response in that he says, well, she was better off dead than, being a drug addict. And, the devil had his had her, and, it was better. Now she's happy in heaven with Jesus and all of this stuff, And I was like, this is bullshit. And I was like, fuck you, fuck all of you. Mm-hmm. And I literally picked up my bags and walked out. And I was like, I can't justify any of this anymore. And decided I was gonna, take my fight on the outside.
First day that you were out, where do you go?
I left with, I think I had $200 saved, and that's it, nothing in the world. I had no formal education, no bank account, no CV, I was not registered anywhere. I literally was a ghost on the system. I did not exist. But I went and stayed with a friend who took me in for a couple of weeks, and then she helped me write a CV. I got a job managing one of the nightclubs there in the Kampala.
You're so cool. You're like a random there with a club.
After that sense of freedom, you realize how much catching up you have to do and how much you have been deprived of, and how you really have nothing, and you're so far behind everyone else your age on the outside. I read constantly, voraciously, every single book I could get my hands on, information. I was so hungry for information. And I had so many gaps in my knowledge, just cultural gaps, everything. So I was just reading to catch up. And then that overwhelming sense of being so behind. And then arrives a point where you get angry. Because the more on the outside I was, and the more I realized how wrong our childhoods had been and how much abuse we had suffered that I hadn't even realized because I didn't know any better. I just thought that's what happens to children. That's normal, that amount of psychological, physical abuse. I just thought that was life. Basically, in order to make sense of everything that happened to me, to my family, to all of us children, I started to write everything down. All I could remember, all my memories, started to write it down. And this would eventually become the book, Not Without My Sister. And I went to visit my eldest sister, Celeste, who I had lived part of my childhood with in Asia. I went to go see her. She was living in the UK. And she was getting a degree in child psychology. And her sister, who had left with her mother when she was younger. So I went to visit them and stayed with them for a month or so.
Oh, well done.
And while I was there, I said, listen, I've started to write. This could even be a book. And they said, it's interesting because we were both talking about also writing our story. So why don't we join forces and make it a 3-story book with all of our different stories woven together and how it happened on her side, on her side, on her side. And so that's how the first book.
Now the cult is close, disappeared.
Yeah. After the book, that was an international bestseller. So much attention went onto the group and they could no longer function.
Oh, well done.
They are cowards. Whenever they were attacked, they ran and hid because the truth was too out there. They couldn't even say we were liars. They couldn't even do that. They tried. So, but that book was gone. So many lawyers went through it before it was published. And we had every single word backup proof. We had affidavits. We had all the people who were there.
Well done.
They could say nothing. It was out there for the world to see. So between the suicide of the cult leader's son, which was like splashed all over the world's news, and there were then documentaries made, and just the truth just went boom and exploded. This was the best outcome I could possibly have hoped for at the time. Like all of the children from the next generation were free to follow their own paths and live their normal lives. So basically, Dad from that day on saw us as demon possessed, and to this day still believes. To this day, but I thought that after so many years and being outside and with the good information, he still believes that they were right, and he can't accept that his whole life had been a lie. That's and everything he had done. He's too proud. He's a narcissist, and he can't accept that
he was wrong.
He said literally to my sister, if he accepts he was wrong in one thing, then it's like a domino effect, right? Then everything was wrong. Everything was a lie. And if he has to accept that, he has to kill himself.
What about your mom? Like now that she gets like all this information, she's outside.
Yeah, so Mom lives in Vietnam. When the group disbanded, she kind of went through the whole process psychologically and understanding how she had been wrong. For her, it was actually, she suffered a lot from having to give me up. It was one of the hardest things she ever did. And knowing that I had not grown up with my father and that they had lied to her, that also hurt her a lot. She did the work, and she, did the apologizing to us and all of that. And, so we're all very close with her, and she comes and visits us every year, and, she does the mama tour.
Maybe I tell you, you're like, no, but you changed the life of so many people by writing that book. It's crazy. You ended the circle, of pain and abuse. And Juliana, how do you, like the main question, like when I was listening to you, I had problems I was like, please don't cry. I'm not the main character, don't cry, you know what I mean?
You can.
But how do you overcome something like that? Because, when we were talking and we were like, only The Exorcist, like that could be like 5 years of therapy. How do you, every single thing, and the more, I guess you went through more painful stuff that we don't want to talk about here, you know what I mean? How do you overcome that?
First of all, writing the book was a form of therapy for me, because it really helped me to, like I say, digest it and then put it all out onto paper. It was like a great big cleansing of my system, got it all out. And then I studied in the university, I studied psychology and sociology and started to understand the mechanisms behind why people do certain things, what makes their brains work that way, why, like you're saying, whole groups of people are able to do, things that are ordinarily, they know better, they wouldn't do it in society, but because they're in this certain circumstances that allows them to, I guess, that gives them permission to try things or do things that they wouldn't otherwise ever do, right? So, studying psychology helped me also process everything and understand it. Once I understand something, then I can move on beyond it. I moved to Italy as a teacher to get away from this cult kind of blanket that had thrown over me and I couldn't get rid of because everybody knew me. In Italy, nobody knew me. And then while I was in Italy, I got back in touch with an old flame of mine from Uganda. He was a South African explorer. Anyway, we decided we wanted to meet up again and try and make a go of it and see what happened. So I booked a ticket back to Uganda for New Year's and we were going to, it was one of those let's try. And then 3 weeks before I was going to fly out, he was on a kayaking trip with a couple of Americans. And out of nowhere, a crocodile came up and took him under, and they never found his body. And I guess up until that point, having lost already so many friends and family, I had always found a way to bounce back my whole life. I was quite a resilient character. But that was like a last blow for me. I just couldn't come back from. I couldn't see my future anymore. Like I couldn't see a future that he wasn't in. And I fell into, I think, maybe the darkest depression of my life. Anyway, I did end up taking the ticket and I went to his memorial instead of seeing him. And we were all sitting around a campfire and one of his friends was talking. We were talking about how life is so fragile in the sense that we think we've got a life to live and then just from like that gone. You don't know that tomorrow is your last day or next year. You don't know how much time we have. We think it's infinite. And she was saying something like, if we died tomorrow, have you done everything you wanted to do? And I was like, I'm just starting life. And yeah, I felt old, like I had already lived a lot of life. And I thought, I don't know, what would, And she was saying, I would like to go and cycle across Canada. And she's like, you want to come cycle across Canada with me? And I was like, no, I've already driven across Canada. It's kind of boring. It's kind of boring. But then it got me thinking like, well, if I was going to cycle any country, where would I want to cycle, right? And I was like, what's an interesting country? So I started to look up online, like interesting cycle journeys, and then came across Mark Beaumont, who is the famous one to have circumnavigated the world on the bicycle. And I was like, yeah, I mean, why not do why not do the world? If you're going to do a continent, just keep going, And I'm an extremist.
Never something, Like when I was reading about you and I read about, I think it's, if I'm not wrong, you were like the fastest.
First and the fastest, yeah.
Yeah,
first woman to do it.
Oh my God, yeah. Juliana! Wow.
Well, so I understood then. I was researching, and then it occurred to me then through the research that there's no woman ever done it, and I was like, why? It's 2011. It was 2011. I was like, what? No woman has ever cycled the world. I was like, how's that possible in this day and age? But then I found out because I tried to get a sponsor, tried to get anyone interested, and they were like, yeah, who are you? And they were right, to be fair, because I was not an athlete and I was not a cyclist. In fact, I'd never cycled before.
What the fuck? How?
But I was like, I think I needed, I wanted to escape. I needed a way to move forward. And for me, that the movement of a bicycle was a way of taking out that emotional pain in a physical sense. I could put it all out on the road. And then when I was tired, I could finally sleep at night instead of cry. It was like, the exhaustion of being on the bike, the pain in my legs, it was a way I could just like get it out of my...
It was your way to cope with pain, like
of
emotional
coping with it.
pain.
Yeah. And I found a great liberty in that, just being on an open road and not have to think anything, just being free on the road.
The last question I always make to everybody that I interview is like, if you could see yourself when you were, in your case, it's like when you were a kid, and you could give yourself an advice or a life lesson or tell you something, what would you say to yourself?
Nothing lasts forever. It will pass. Because when you're in it, it feels like there's no way out. Just darkness, and you don't see any light. You don't see any possibility of ever having a future outside of that. Especially when you're a child, because time goes so slow and you think it's going to be that way forever. Nothing is forever, and it will change, and the wheel will come back up, and eventually you'll be on top again. But you just have to have the patience to endure.
So
just
good.
to endure.
Thank you so much, Juliana. It was amazing to talk to you. I feel like privilegiada, you know? What a beautiful way to end the interview, really. I appreciate so much. Like, I really feel privilegiada that you're here and I get to talk to you and everything. And
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so happy right now. I have a podcast and this is going to arrive to people, you know, because there's so many people that need to listen to something like that, you know.